request that he be allowed to take my time in the rotation so that and I didn't want to do it.
Do you want to do that now?
I'd like to do that.
Without objection.
Right. Okay. Well, I just wanted to make it clear that I wasn't doing it because he was out of the room. I'd actually sent a message to him that I was planning to do that. Yeah.
Well, he apparently didn't care enough to stay. Without objection.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to proceed unless staff has been able to communicate. Well, I won't take all the 5 minutes. I'll try to be very brief. In fact,
whatever you don't use, I'll use myself.
Well, thank you. And this has been a very informative hearing, and I'm going to request both witnesses, or extend an invitation to both witnesses to appear before the subcommittee that I chair, because this obviously has foreign policy implications, which is the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Oversight. And I would hope they would accept that invitation for a more expansive conversation and dialogue about these very important issues. It's true that the United States is a signatory to the Convention Against Torture. Is that accurate, Professor? Yeah, either one.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay, and the domestic legislation we're talking about was to implement the Convention Against Torture.
That's correct.
And the whole issue of what constitutes torture, what techniques are implicated in that definition, would you all agree that there are some techniques that are per se considered torture, such as electric shocks? Professor Yo?
I'm sorry, it's you.
You, I apologize.
In the memo, we have a list, an appendix.
I haven't had an opportunity to review the memo. But would you consider the use of electric shocks?
Yes, it's one of the things that are listed in the back of the memo as things that courts have found to violate this, not this statute, but the other statute, because there was a second statute called the Torture Victim Protection Act, which is a little different than the criminal statute, but we thought, close enough.
What about waterboarding?
I'd have to know exactly what you mean by waterboarding, but there is a description in the appendix of, in the appendix to the 2002 memo that talks about, trying to drown somebody. But when people say waterboarding, they seem to have lots of different. They're referring to lots of different things. So I think it's important to be precise if we're talking about what courts approved. I'm sorry, not what courts approved. Courts have interpreted the language to mean or not.
Well, it's been reported that on 3 different occasions the Central Intelligence Agency utilized waterboarding, and at least that was the term that was used in the reports in the media. Is that your understanding, Professor? Professor Yu? Are you aware of that?
Well, sir, I've read the same press accounts that you have, I'm sure, and I have seen it in the press accounts, and I've also seen it in, I believe, a statement made by the President.
And I think
by the head of the CIA.
By the head of the CIA. And that was my understanding. Well, it was acknowledged by the head of the CIA. And I think you, Mr. Addington, indicated that you had multiple conversations regarding enhanced interrogation techniques with the CIA.
With the Office of Legal Counsel, Office of General Counsel at CIA.
Did the issue of waterboarding arise during the course of those conversations?
I think you'll find that over the years, as the lawyers in the group talked, at various times there would be discussion of particular techniques. As I indicated to the chairman at the beginning of this, when the subject came up.
Was waterboarding one of?
Yeah, that's what I'm answering because I know where you're headed. As I indicated to the chairman at the beginning of this thing, I'm not in a position to talk about particular techniques, whether they are or aren't used or could or couldn't be used, or their legal status. And the reasons I would give for that, if you look at, I think it's Exhibit 9, the President's speech of September 6, 2006, explains why he doesn't talk about what particular techniques.
Oh, I can understand why he doesn't
But
talk
you've got to
about it.
communicate with Al-Qaeda. If you do, I can't talk to you. Al-Qaeda may watch C-SPAN.
Right. Well, I'm sure they are watching, and I'm glad they finally have a chance to see you, Mr. Addington.
Yeah, I'm sure you're pleased.
Given your penchant for being unobtrusive. In any event, there would appear to be a question then as to whether the use of on those three occasions that have been acknowledged by the CIA and reported in the media as to the technique that was used, as to whether it was a violation, a per se violation of the Convention Against Torture or not. Would you agree with me, Professor Yu?
Your question is, you're saying there's an open question whether
Right.
waterboarding in the way used by the CIA violated the Convention Against Torture.
That's what I'm saying. It's an open question.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just want to make sure.
Sure.
I think one of the problems is that the Convention Against Torture is interpreted different ways by different countries. And so if your question is, does waterboarding, is the way it's been described by the director of the CIA, Mr. Hayden, violates the treaty, it may violate the treaty as understood by some countries.
Right.
Can
I understand?
Our understanding of the treaty is defined by the criminal statute and the Torture Victims Protection.
Without objection, Mr. White has one additional minute, which he has yielded to Mr. Delahunt.
I would pose this. The techniques, whatever was utilized on those occasions, and I think we can agree it's an open question, if they were used on American military personnel, it would still be an open question as to whether they violated the Convention Against Torture then.
I assume you're still asking me.
I'm asking you, Professor.
Yeah, Mr. Delahunt, my understanding of the testimony that the head of OLC gave before the committee was that it was his view that if we're using it as part of the training of our own servicemen and officials who might be captured, that I thought it was his view in his testimony that that would not be a violation of the statute. But
so if it was used by an enemy because we considered that it did not constitute torture, then the enemy that utilized that on American military personnel would not be in violation of the Convention Against Torture. Is that a fair statement?
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness will answer this question. Please.
Sir, I don't remember whether Mr. Bradbury went that far and reached that conclusion. That could be an implication of what his statement was, but I don't.
Excuse me. The question was of you, not of Mr. Bradbury.
I know, sir, but I wanted to make sure that I'm not that it's clear what the administration's position, as I understand it, is, because they directly answered the question to the committee.
But would you answer the question if some enemy interrogator used that technique on an American prisoner of war, would that be?
My view now is that it would depend on the circumstances. I think that there would. I agree with the congressman.
Okay. Thank you. It would depend on the circumstances.
No, but I just want to. Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
I mean, I just want to fully answer your question.
Go ahead.
You're cutting me off.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were cutting me off again, and I was accepting the cutoff that time. No, my only point is that it would depend on the circumstances, but I'm not saying it would always not be torture, sir. Again, there's an appendix at the back of an opinion that lists trying to drown somebody as